get to the heart of the story, we had to get to the heart of the jungle. Here, in the remote Salamanca highlands of northern Panama, just miles from where Kris and Lisanne were last seen. We're retracing their footsteps, we're following the deadly path that claimed their lives.
We came here to investigate 2 tragic deaths, but what we found is a mystery far stranger than anything we'd ever imagined. We've uncovered a string of other related murders, corrupt government officials, and a town terrified to speak out about what really happened and who's responsible.
Wish I could stay away from this
town, and this is a very small town in Panama, that if you speak about this, you may end up dead.
Just a quick warning, this video will contain explicit content. The video will tell some gruesome details about murder victims and crimes committed by a very disturbed individual. This is not a topic that can be treaded lightly, and as such, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, lovelies. It's Lady Curious back with another true crime. Today, I actually have astheravendreams joining me. So we both really hope that you enjoy this. The mysterious death of Kris Kremer and Lisanne Froon. This case has been huge in the media ever since it happened. There has been so many conspiracies, theories, and just a lot of crazy media frenzy things about this case, speculations about this case, everyone having their own opinions on what happened to these 2 beautiful souls. I heard about this case a very long time ago. I'm guessing around when it happened. But the area that it happened in Panama, there is a speculation that down there, there's a lot of gang activity, a lot of drug movement, and it is an epidemic of tourists going missing in Panama. Just in 2022, over 400 missing people cases were opened. And a lot of those are tourists that come there to visit. So the question is Panama dangerous? My opinion, yes, very dangerous. You must be cautious when you go visit. I do want you to remember that this video is for educational and documentary purposes only. Please go do your own research. I have researched as much as I can. There is only so much that is complete fact, but then, like I said, there is so much that is speculation and theories. And if I actually went down the rabbit hole on each of these theories, this video would never end. So we have outlined the ones that are most popular theories about what happened. I have my own opinion about what happened, even though my opinion is this is probably what happened to the girls. I don't know exactly, but I will say this, that they were murdered. It was not an accident. Panama officials have tried to cover this up. You know, they don't want people to stop coming to visit because it brings in money. But when a lot of people are going missing like that, the truth is so blinding that you can't cover it up. It's just out there for everyone to see, and you just look really dumb lying about it. Now, there are a lot of people that have gone missing. I have a couple names here. I've tried to look up people that have gone missing in the same area that Kris and Lisanne did. The media and the internet is so saturated with Kris and Lisanne's disappearance that you would have to dig and dig and dig to find each person's name that has gone missing around the same time that these girls did in that same little town, that you can't really find the information that I wanted to find about other people that have gone missing. Every single thing that popped up was about Kris and Lisanne. Now, this is a background. Kris Kremers was 21 and Lisanne Froon was 22. They both grew up in the Netherlands. Now, Kris was described as open and creative and very responsible. And Lisanne was described as inspiring and optimistic and intelligent. And Lisanne was a passionate volleyball player. And Kris had just completed her studies in cultural social education, specializing in art education at the University of Utrecht. Froon had graduated with a degree in applied psychology from Duvingen. The two women from Amsterdam in the Netherlands met whilst working at the Kleinen Hop restaurant in Amsterdam, and they both rented rooms in the same student house. Only a few weeks prior to leaving for Panama, Lisanne actually moved in with Kris in a dorm room, and they worked together at the same restaurant. They both saved up money for about 6 months, and they wanted to plan this special 6-week vacation whilst hoping to learn Spanish and to do something of significance for the locals, particularly volunteering with children. Lisanne had just graduated with a degree in applied sciences in September 2013. They actually wanted to go there to Panama, and they wanted to go in to that town and do something and teach the kids in their school. Finally, March 15th, 2014, Kris and Lisanne got on a plane at Amsterdam Airport to travel to Costa Rica in Latin America. From there, they traveled to Bocas del Toro in Panama. They were there for a 6-week vacation, 4 of which were spent living with a host family while they worked as volunteers in Bocas, teaching local children in the school and learning Spanish. But when they arrived at the home of their host family, Lisanne and Kris were told their jobs were to start in a week, rather than immediately as they had expected. So, they decided to take the time to explore the area of Bocas whilst they waited for their jobs to start. They spent some time on the coast learning some Spanish and enjoying the local food and to drink, and they met 2 Dutch travelers who were visiting the area at the same time. 2 weeks after arriving in Panama on March 29th, they moved to Bocas, a city in the west side of the country. Bocas is a small mountain town in Panama, about 37 miles from the border of Costa Rica. It is situated on the Caldera River in Panama, Green Mountain Highlands. Because of its elevation above sea level, its climate is cooler than that of the lowlands. Its scenic location, temperature, and natural environment make it popular with Panamanians and attracts tourists and retirees from all over the world. Lisanne was known to have asthma and complained to her host family of shortness of breath. Her asthma paired with the altitude change and panic caused by being lost may have impacted her ability to survive this horrible ordeal that happens to these 2 girls. So, these 2 Dutch women decided before they started that next Monday, I think it was, in this school to teach the Bocas children, they wanted to go on a 5 to 6 hour hike that was near Bocas, close to the Continental Divide of Panama on April 1st, 2014. This day they left Bocas in good weather at mid-morning to hike the Pinista Trail, an up and down path, hence the name. It was a very moderate trail. They planned to hike to the summit around 8 miles from city, and a taxi supposedly dropped them off at the start of the trail, allegedly. According to the driver, it was mid-afternoon, but the evidence from the lady's camera suggested it was around 11 a.m. It should take a good fit person 2.5 to 3 hours to reach the summit, so it was about a 5 to 6 hour round trip, there and back, so around 6 hours. They had posted on Facebook about going to explore the area and meeting up with fellow Dutch travelers for brunch that morning. They took with them a dog from the village and set out. They set out on the walk with light clothing, tank tops and shorts, together with a light backpack containing their passports, water bottles, a Canon PowerShot digital camera, some money, it was around $80, and their cell phones, an iPhone and a Samsung Galaxy. The area beyond the trail is very rugged, steep, and dangerous. Like I said, a moderate hike, particularly during the April and October wet seasons, where areas become treacherous and even the indigenous Nagobe tribe tread warily. And this is a tribe that has a village kind of right in the middle, in between the start of the trail and the end of the trail. The trail runs into the province of Boca del Toro, crossing steep river gorges up to 70 feet deep, which need to be crossed using cable bridges. Kris and Lisanne reached the summit around 1 p.m., and it seems for some reason they decided to carry on beyond the normal trail. Normally, tourists turn around at this lookout point at the top of the Pianista Trail to walk the same path back to Bouquet. So they would walk up to the Pianista Trail, and there is a lookout where the Continental Divide runs horizontal. So it's kind of a dead end at the Continental Divide. There are signs placed at this point nowadays warning people not to keep walking further without a guide, because it's kind of like, doing off-trailing backpacking, and it's very, very dangerous. They had looked the trail up on a computer the days prior to the hike and may have thought they still had time to walk on to a waterfall that was deeper in the jungle. They were not equipped for a prolonged period in the forest with no food or survival gear. Hikers who planned to go off into more adventurous areas usually pay guides and take special equipment and supplies to last for days, including tents, foods, and rainproof clothing. Some sources say they took with them a dog that belonged to the owner, the La Panista restaurant, but this has not been confirmed. The woman wrote on Facebook that they intended to walk around Bouquet, and it was reported that they had been seen having brunch with 2 young Dutch men before embarking on the trail. Some sources claim the owners of the restaurant became alarmed when their dog returned home that night without Kris and Lisanne. Lisanne's parents stopped receiving text messages, which both women have been sending to their families daily. Later that evening on April 1st, the dog's owners were alarmed, and when the 2 women didn't come back 2 days later on April 3rd, that's when they were reported missing. After the family that they were staying with and the local guide, who was due to take them to a national park nearby on April 2nd, grew concerned. After they were declared missing, authorities put dog teams on the ground and helicopters, but initial searches proved fruitless, even with the help of local residents. Now, on April 6th, their parents arrived in Panama, along with police, dog units, and detectives from the Netherlands to conduct a full-scale search of the forest for 10 days. The parents offered a $30,000 reward for any information leading to the whereabouts of Kris and Lisanne. Now, this is important because later, when I tell you the theory that this man on YouTube came up with was blew my mind, and I really do believe that this is what happened to these girls. So remember that $30,000 reward. On a larger search with specialized search and rescue teams as well as the sniffer dogs, which went on for further 10 days, but still nothing. There was no sign of the women or their belongings. So just think about it. They searched miles and miles into this forest and never found anything, okay? Even places where some of their stuff would turn up later down the road was not there when they searched in the beginning. That's a little fishy, okay? The parents were also offering, this $30,000 reward, and some people came forward thinking payday, but I digest. Let's move on.
10 weeks later, in June of 2014, a local woman found the backpack in a rice paddy on the bank of the Kilbra, or Serpent River, near the village of Alta Romero, around 10.5 miles, or 17 kilometers, from Bocage, and 5 miles, or 8 kilometers, from the summit of the La Pianista Trail. It was estimated that it was around an 8-hour walk from their last known location, and the village was in a very remote area, which would have been difficult to reach on foot. Around the same time, Kris Kremer's jean shorts were discovered on a narrow piece of land between two fast-flowing and powerful tributaries. The Ingo people who found the shorts said that they found them zipped and folded and placed on a rock high above the water. Police from the Justice Department picked up the pack from the woman using a helicopter. They assumed that it had drifted to the area in the river. But the backpack contents were dry and undamaged, and the bag looked in good condition, despite weeks in the jungle or river. Furthermore, the finder said that she was sure the pack was not in the location the day before. Heavy rain had hit the area in the prior few weeks, so it would be expected that everything would be soaked through, suggesting that it had been placed there prior to its discovery by persons unknown. Lisanne's asthma inhaler was not among the belongings recovered. Investigators determined that the belongings had 34 different fingerprints, with 13 on the bag. Some DNA was also detected on the backpack contents, but none led to any serious leads for the police. A key piece of evidence was the discovery of Lisanne's Canon PowerShot XS270 camera, with over 100 images on the digital memory card, in addition to the passports, cell phones, sunglasses, cash, and their bras when the content of the backpack were searched. There were 133 consecutive photos found, with only one mystery shot missing, image number 509. The camera has no GPS location options, so investigators could only establish or guess the location of the photos based on the surroundings that were visible to them. The first pictures, on April 1st, were standard tourist shots, with both women laughing and smiling on a bright sunny day, with some selfies taken at the overlook of the divide. Most of the pictures were taken by Lisanne, with Kris walking ahead of her on the trail. Then we see the girls apparently following an indigenous trail near a creek or stream, heading downhill, away from their destination, Bocage. Kris's face on one of the shots showing anxiety with sunset around 6:40 p.m. in the rainforest. Image number 508 is the last photo taken by Lisanne and Kris, but there are two versions of photo 508. One shows in its metadata that it was taken 8 seconds after photo 507, but another version of the same photo states that this last photo of Kris looking backwards was taken 50 seconds prior to the previous photo of her passing the creek. This anomaly could be the result of photo manipulation. No more daytime photos were made on April 1st after the last stream picture, number 508. So, maybe they tried to return to Bocage at this point, but were intercepted. Dutch specialists have tried to undelete the missing photo, which normally is not a challenge when an image is manually deleted, because pressing the delete button does not mean the whole file is actually erased. However, experts failed to recover the missing photo, and it would be impossible for the camera to skip a number by accident when shooting photos. Did somebody connect the camera to a computer and erase the photo to make it irretrievable? Perhaps the girls themselves manually deleted this specific photo, and the subsequent photos had overwritten the deleted file permanently. But when a manually deleted photo is overwritten by new photos, there is often normally at least a fraction of the deleted photo found. And to find no trace is suspicious, or puzzling at the least. It is plausible that the Panamanian authorities took photo number 509 off the camera themselves, because something was on it that they didn't want the outside world to see. Maybe its content was at odds with the controversial accident scenario that the Panamanian police put forward as the main theory. Will the picture ever turn up? It's hard to say. Dutch investigators were almost certain that someone deliberately deleted 509 permanently for reasons unknown, probably with the help of a computer. Since it is between the normal daytime photos of April 1st and the mysterious night photos of April 8th, it could be a very important picture. Of all the holiday photos the two women took on their vacation, investigators did not find any deleted photos. In addition, the memory card had plenty of space left. The emergency services calls started around this time. Coincidence? Maybe, but possibly not. The Travel Channel's Lost in the Wild Hike into Hell featured the disappearance of Kris and Lisanne. The presenters, Kinga Phillips and J.J. Kelly, showed in a simple manner that if Kris and Lisanne had removed photo number 509 manually any time before the first nighttime photo was made, it would have never even known that it had been deleted, because the next photo, the first nighttime photo, would have automatically received the number 509. The strangest pictures on the camera, and perhaps of the most interest, were 90 photos taken on April 8th, between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., many in complete darkness, with rain falling. Some were taken a few seconds apart, and others up to 15 minutes later. Several shots appear to have been taken deliberately, as they were not blurred, indicating that they were not taken under duress. At this point, the girls had been in the rainforest for a week. Some internet sleuths have speculated that the women were trying to use the camera as a light source in the pitch black, or perhaps to signal potential rescuers, or even to scare away wild animals. But analysis of the shots show that many are taken below foliage, and not in the open. And if the girls were trying to attract attention, they would have taken the pictures in the open. A single close-up seems to show a wound on the right side of Kris's head in the temple area, as well as blood in her hair. Lisanne may have been using the camera to offer clues to subsequent rescuers where Kris was if she needed to be left behind because of her injuries. Some of the shots appear to be oriented upwards, whilst others show ravines and gorges, and even man-made structures, most likely to be a cable bridge. These bridges are very dangerous, especially in the rain. One photo seems to show a bridge 3 miles from Bokech on the western bank of a tributary that forms the headwaters of the Culebra River. Were the girls trying to follow the river downstream, as advocated by many survival guides? Analysis of the call records of the iPhone owned by Kris showed her trying to reach an emergency services number in the Netherlands at 16:39 on the day that they went missing, April 1st, using the Dutch emergency number 112. This was followed by a call to Panamanian emergency numbers using 911. Due to the poor reception, their calls were not connected. The Dutch number, 112, also works in Panama, and can also transfer to the emergency number of the country that the phone network is in. They subsequently turned off their phones and tried calling 14 hours later, several times, on April 2nd. Both phones were used to make these calls, and on one of these calls they actually made a connection at 6:58 a.m. Lisanne's Samsung connected for just 1 to 2 seconds on the 112 number, but the call quickly failed. And 36 seconds later, the phone was again switched off. They never managed to get a connection again, despite trying several times. On April 6th, 5 days after their hike began, Lisanne's Samsung mobile phone stopped working, presumably because the battery went dead. Kris's iPhone was turned off until April 11th, when it was activated at 10:51, and stayed on for 1 hour and 5 minutes. This was the last time the iPhone was used. On day 6, when Lisanne's Samsung battery had failed, someone attempted to access Kris's iPhone, but the PIN was incorrectly entered. It is claimed that 77 attempts were made to access the phone between April 7th and April 10th. Froon's Canon camera contained photos from the 1st of April, suggesting that women had taken a trail at the overlook of the Continental Divide and wandered into some wilderness hours before their first attempt at making emergency calls, but with no signs of anything unusual. On the 8th of April, 90 flash photos were taken between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., apparently deep in the jungle and in near complete darkness. A few photos show that they were possibly near a river or a ravine. Some show a twig with plastic bags on top of a rock. Another shows what looks like a backpack strap and a mirror on another rock. And another shows the back of Kremer's head.
Following the discovery of the backpack, a local guide, with the help of 6 native Nagob people, found bone remains, jean shorts, and 2 different shoes along the river Rio Culebra River. Shortly before June 19th, 2014, the jean shorts were found 14 hours of walking distance from the backpack on top of a rock on the opposite bank of the river, at least 8 walking hours away from Bouquet. Some witness claimed that they in fact found the jean shorts not neatly folded at all, floating in the river itself. The bone remains were found on June 19th behind a tree in the vicinity of Alto Romero and away from the river. Lisanne Froon's left foot was found intact and inside her wildebeest boot, showing multiple fractures of the metatarsals. DNA tests later confirmed a match. The laces were still tightly laced, and it also had a sock inside the foot which was still had some skin and flesh on it. The shoe with the foot was found upstream, not downstream, upstream, okay, emphasizing. Forensic analysis found that the cut of the bone of the foot was surprisingly clean and that no blood was found on it. But there was no signs of cutting, hacking, gunshots, or teeth or claw markings. At least 33 scattered bones, mainly found a left leg, were also discovered along the same riverbank, a few miles from the cable bridge and Dry River Stones, where some investigators think the nighttime photos have been taken. Very few other remnants were found, and the ones retrieved were found scattered, sometimes a mile apart from one another, but all following the direction of the river. One half of a pelvic bone was also found, part broken, which is identified as Kris's. Later, Kris's number 10 rib bone was also found, as well as a femur upper leg bone from Lisanne, and possibly her tibia bone. A rolled up ball of skin from Lisanne's shin was also located by investigators sometime later on August 29th, 2014. The forensic pathologist later found that the skin was still in an early stage of decomposition, even containing maggots. Don't you think that's weird? When supposedly they died and they were finding bones that's been out there for longer than that of the skin they found with maggots? Just does not fit together. It just does not make any sense, y'all, at all. In contrast with Kris's fully bleached and clean bones. Okay, The pathologist also found that the bone marrow in the femur and tibia from Lisanne's proved to be dry and undecomposed. The bone marrow was intact and unaltered. The forensic pathologist thought that the piece of skin may have been manipulated by someone. Don't you think? I hate to say this, y'all, but were they like saving it for later to eat or something? And that is a theory that these villagers of this tribe, I'm not pointing blame at anybody. Allegedly, there were cannibals out there, and they really believe that they were murdered, cut up, their bones picked and bleached, and thrown into the river. I mean, hello, that's what it seems like what kind of happened. I mean, they didn't eat all of them, but yeah, in like the torso and their head and all the other stuff, their arms and all this was never found, y'all. Never found. It's very upsetting and disgusting, to be honest, that there are cannibals and crazy ass people out there that will do this to other people. The remains were found 2 months later in mysterious circumstances, which the authorities were claiming it was an accident, whilst Dutch private investigators working for the family are convinced that there were likely to be foul play involved. Certainly the Panamanian authorities' explanation had many holes in their theory that the two women had fallen off the cable monkey bridge across a river and were washed away. They're like, oh, yeah, that's what happened. They were walking across the monkey bridge, and oopsie, they fell into the river and hit their head or whatever, and they were washed away. First off, that does not explain their cut up bones. If they fell into the river, you would see a fully intact skeleton, not bleached and cut up bones scattered all over the place. Yeah, the Panama government, y'all it's not adding up, y'all. It's just not. No one's taking your bullshit. No one's taking it. Okay. With disturbing photographic evidence of their last days, including the mysterious missing picture number 509, and plenty of unanswered questions. There have been many theories that have raged across the internet forums in the years since their tragic deaths. But for now, the case continues to raise questions, despite its official conclusions. Discovery of the backpack led to new searches along the Collab River. Kris's denim shorts were found on top of a rock opposite the bank of the tributary, a few miles away from where Lisanne's backpack had been discovered. A rumor claimed that the shorts were found zipped and neatly folded, but pictures of the shorts published in 2021 disproved this information. And also, first off, if they slipped and fell and hit some rocks, why the fuck? Why the fuck were their clothes taken off of them? That doesn't make sense. Because I'm sure that if that happened, that accident supposedly happened, that it would be shorts zipped and buttoned around skeleton. Hello? That is common sense. Anywho, I'm getting all worked up. I'm so sorry, y'all. It really pisses me off. 2 months later, closer to where the backpack was discovered, a pelvis and boot with a foot inside were found. Soon, at least 33 widely scattered bones were discovered along the same riverbank. Panamanian forensic anthropologists later claimed that under magnification, there are no discernible scratches of any kind on the bone, neither of nature nor cultural origin. There are no marks on the bones at all. Had natural decomposition of the body near a river caused the bones, which are heavier than water, to sink in the bottom of the river. Markings on the bones should have been visible from friction of the riverbed. So it's kind of like shells that make sand. If something is sitting in a river and you have the river continuously flowing over it and things passing, it's going to eventually wear down in those areas, and they did not find that on the bones at all. So those bones were not in the river for that long. On one bone fragment that was Kris's, that half of her pelvis was bleached. Under natural composition, a pelvis, especially from a younger person's, does not break in half. Furthermore, it is not likely to have been caused by predators. So they found her pelvis, and half of it was bleached, and the bleached part broke. And they said that that's impossible because she's young, they weren't out there for too long, and her bones should not be breaking. Furthermore, it is not likely to have been caused by predators. Moreover, the bone was missing joint tissues that usually remains intact for years under natural decomposition. So they're saying that if you died out in the wilderness, that for a natural decomposition of your body, you would be left with joint tissue for a long time on those bones. And they were missing. So that means their bones were picked. That's what I mean about cannibalism and all of that. Panamanian authorities came under fire for allegedly mishandling the disappearance and aftermath. Further investigation into the case in 2017 raised questions about the initial investigation, as well as a possible link to murders in the area. Although many theories have been presented as to what happened to Kris and Lisanne, no official cause of death has been ruled to this day.
Initially, neither the Dutch nor Panamanian forensics teams could provide a cause of death, with the official theory from the Panamanian authorities being that the women fell off of a monkey bridge and were washed away by the raging waters. The Dutch police concluded the deaths were likely an accident, but some of the Panamanian police and Dutch private investigators strongly believed that the deaths could have been foul play, given some of the strange evidence they found. The case was first officially declared a homicide and a crime against personal integrity by Panama's Attorney General in the Cherokee Judicial State Report. But later, in October of 2014, two forms from the Panamanian state officials described the deaths as a case of abduction. When Panamanian forensics teams failed to come to a definitive and official conclusion, the case was closed and considered an accident. They believed that Lisanne and Kris decided to continue into the wild terrain in the Continental Divide region and succumbed to the jungle. According to officials, it was a simple case of being lost, and Kris fell first. Lisanne tended to her and then photographed her remains in the dark, and continued until she also fell, broke her ankle and foot, perhaps fell into the river, and eventually died from exhaustion, hunger, and the elements. But Dutch pathologist Dr. Frank Vondegout was skeptical of this explanation. He said, "There is no way to get lost. You actually don't need a guide." With regards to the official theory that the girls both fell off of a monkey bridge and washed away, Vondegout said, "No way. They would never even go on it." In regards to the strange nighttime pictures on the camera, Frank said, "Yes, I saw them. They are creepy. They're Blair Witch Project. The part of the jungle out there is known by the guides as Jungle Hell. Past the Continental Divide, people die up here. When you are out there in the daylight, there's no problem, but when you're out there in the dark, it's game over. You haven't seen the cable bridges. I'm a mountaineer, and you're full mortal on that bridge." It appears at first sight that both women died because of the difficult and dangerous conditions in the Panamanian jungle. But was there something more sinister at play here? For start, it was strange that one of their bags was found some way from the river without water damage. But if foul play was involved, why weren't the valuables stolen? Perhaps a rapist or a murderer just wanted to taunt the authorities, or they came across drug traffickers. A sad case indeed, with a terrible last few days for Lisanne and Kris and their Panamanian adventure. In a bid to find answers about their death, filmmaker and explorer J.J. Kelly and journalist King of Phillips ventured deep into the Panamanian jungle in their series Lost in the Wild. In that aforementioned episode, Hike into Hell, they brave torrential rains and darkness to follow the women's footsteps, matching their photos and phone records as they go. They find and attempt to cross the perilous cable bridge the Panamanian government say the women fell from, and speak with the indigenous couple who discovered Lisanne's backpack. Finally, their investigation culminates in an exclusive, explosive interview with the forensics pathologist who shares shocking evidence. One other theory is that they were killed to sell their organs on the black market. A theory that we can't say didn't happen.
There are so many different theories on what happened to these girls. There are many I have found online that are barely talked about. I'll play some interviews that a lot of witnesses came forward and reported, but it seemed like the police just ignored these people and did not go further to investigate their tips. This part of Panama is used for drug trafficking and many gangs. These girls were killed due to foul play or money. It stated these girls did not have a guide, so they were fair game to anyone who came across them. The main story I heard about that happened to them is that one that fits the most, in my opinion. And this is it. It stated that the son of the restaurant, where the two girls would go every day, gave the girls a ride to the trailhead in a red truck. And there are people that have came forward and were talking about a red truck, and they were ignored. Some men involved was Edwin and Osman. Two men that were in gangs saw them and followed them. The other names that were involved was Henry and George. They followed them for a while out of sight of the girls on the trail. A lot of areas in this trail you could actually walk, and the ground, the elevation was a lot lower than some other elevations. It was kind of like you're walking in a gorge, sort of, and someone could be up top, out of sight, and following you, and you would never know unless you were like actively looking up and like, who's following me, So it is said they were followed throughout the forest. They said that Lisanne was killed first by a blunt hit to the skull, and Kris jumped on top of the man to get him off of Lisanne, but it did not work, and then Kris was strangled. It said that they were killed by April 3rd, so all the phone calls that were staged to make it look like they got lost and eventually drowned in the river. The whole weird backpack thing of them trying to... So, some of these men literally killed these two girls, okay? And they wanted to make it look like that they drowned, that they did not murder them. They staged the whole phone and 911 calls and all of that because they could get into the girl's phone, one of the girl's phone, and like stated above that the other phone they could not get into because they didn't have the password. And that's why that one of their phones, it showed that someone was actively trying to get into it, but they couldn't. But it was said that they were murdered by April 3rd. And this guy, Edwin, was literally out in the forest calling 911 and doing all this stuff to stage that the girls were still alive. And it was them. And also, all the pictures, he took the camera and was taking pictures of random shit at night just to make it seem like they got lost and all of that. Also, the whole backpack thing was the tribe knew what happened to the girls. And it was odd because they found the backpack in the river, but it wasn't dirty and it didn't seem like it was worn or waterlogged. because it's been sitting in the river the whole time. So that was odd. I watched the documentary when they went and talked to the villagers, and they seemed upset because they didn't understand why they didn't get their $30,000 cash reward for finding the backpack. And they were a little reluctant to talk to the people from the documentary about what they knew exactly about the backpack. It's because I think these people did something to those girls, or that gang member did something to the girls. And a lot of people were covering this up. But one man who is said to be involved in the girls' demise was Osman, was killed 1 year later, by the way, because it was said that he wanted to tell about what really happened to the girls, like it was really bothering him, and all of a sudden he ends up killed. I mean, that's a little fishy. Were they worried that he was going to go and rat them out or something? I think he was killed, so he wouldn't say a word. The people who did this to these girls thought the media and the parents would just go away, but they didn't. And I think that's why they planted the girls' remains along the river. So it would kind of close the case because they were found dead, and then they would all go away and the family would leave because the family was insistent that they were not going to leave Panama until they found out what happened to their girls. And then all of a sudden, boom, their remains were found. And then, yeah, that's a theory. Everything I just said was a really big theory. And I really do believe that a lot of it's true, because in this area, so many people have gone missing due to gangs and drugs. I just read that over 400 tourists have gone missing in Panama since 2022. When I read that, my eyes bulged out like, what the hell? Why is no one going over? The FBI, I know it's in a different country, but whatever their thing is over there in the country, why are they hiding this? I really do believe they got some human trafficking going on over there too. Also, a man named Alex Humphrey vanished from the same town in 2009. Can you believe that? Same town. And the people that were doing those documentaries said that when they were over there, as they were just over there within weeks, 2 other girls went missing in that same area. It's just a huge thing going on. Also, Yvonne Baldelli vanished in 2011. She was from California. She actually went over there to Panama with her boyfriend, and all of a sudden she's not there no more. And it's speculation she was trafficked and sold, I'm guessing. But she was never seen again. Also, in Panama, there's no names affiliated with this. I guess the media wanted to protect them. But there was like 13 young adults that went over there, and they were, near the river. They were having a huge vacation, and all of a sudden they find 7 young adults that were murdered. The ones that survived said that they were held captive for a while and they escaped captivity, but they did find the other 7 dead. I think it was 4 female and 3 men that were passed away. I wish I'd known their names, but I don't, unfortunately. I tried to look it up, but it just wasn't there.
And it's women that don't get a tweet sent about them. It's women that don't get the media attention because they're indigenous, because they're local, because they're black and brown. And, while we were there, two went missing and were later found to have been murdered in cases of femicide. So this is a real epidemic in the region.
Of course, all of this information, all of this evidence and lack thereof to some extent, leaves a significant number of unresolved questions. Who erased the data from Lisanne Froon's camera? And why? What happened to picture 509? Why won't the Panamanian national authorities release the girls' full autopsies? Why haven't they followed up on the leads produced by their own forensic examiners, the Cherokee police force, and local reporters? Or launched a thorough investigation into the other unsolved deaths and missing persons cases in the area? Why do we not know whose fingerprints were on the digital cameras in the phones? This information could assist in knowing who made those last phone calls to 911 and 112. The girls had warned other youngsters in Boca del Toro to not venture out alone without a guide, and they were known to be meticulous planners, so why did they themselves decide to go out alone on a wilderness hike? Or were they not alone after all? Why was Blue the dog, who supposedly walked along with them, never seen in any of their photographs? Why didn't the girls turn back after they placed their first emergency call? Since they got into trouble so early in the trip, as evidenced by their emergency calls, how could they have fallen into a river 12 hours away? There are many wooden sheds and small cabins along the river scattered around the terrain where they had ended up. Going by the location where their remains were scattered, why wouldn't they have hidden there if they were truly lost, waiting for rescue teams to come find them? Why has the location of the 90 nighttime photos not been thoroughly investigated? How could they get lost on a one-way easy track in an inhabited world where the natives walk the mountain trails daily with their cattle? 5 of the 90 nighttime photos have turned up with clear landscapes in them, so how is it possible for Dutch forensics to conclude that they were all dark? Why do these photos seem to be being lied about? Why are the other 85 or so nighttime photos so closely guarded? How come nobody could retrieve even a small part of photo 509, despite this being the norm when a photo is manually deleted? How was it possible for them to have switched their phones on so methodically at set times without having a watch or means to know the time in the jungle? Why were there no more photos or even videos made of the girls and by the girls for 8 days and nights after April 1st? Why were there no calls to their parents at home or host families nearby? And why were there no draft messages or other signs of life for their loved ones found? What was the situation with the incorrect cell phone PIN code? And did Lisanne's Samsung phone ever get a correct PIN code entered? Considering that phone only ever tried to call emergency numbers, which can be attempted without entering a PIN code, this information could be critical. If they were lost and panicking, which is inferred by the calling to emergency services, why would they cross 2 big rivers leading further into the wilderness? And during those 11 days, how come nobody found them despite local natives living there? Not to mention the many people using the area behind the Pianista and the legions of searchers. Why have we never been given the exact location where they fell and perished? Why did the prosecutor declare the girls were dragged to their deaths in the rivers when the pathologists say the bones show no signs of abrasions or injury? What was the real reason the taxi driver died? Did Osman Valenzuela die by accident? Or was he murdered? And is it true that he had photos on his phone of girls matching the descriptions of Kris and Lisanne? What made Lisanne's foot break at the ankle, and how come her foot still had flesh on it, while Kris's bone remnants were bleached? Where are all the other remains, aside from the handful of small bones that were found? And why were their remains found so far from the summit of the Pianista Trail and scattered as such? How come the cheap backpack is said to have been floating in a wild river for weeks, but yet the electronics inside had 0 water damage and were in full functioning order, and the cheap sunglasses were in perfect state? Was the backpack planted in its location? The prosecutor calls such insinuations irresponsible and without foundation, but the evidence shows this is a question worth asking. There are so many more questions that could be asked about this case, but information seems scarce, and most of them don't seem to have logical answers.
My final thoughts on this is that there are so many theories, but I do know that these two girls were murdered. These two girls' lives were lost for no good reason. They were just there to actually help the bouquet people, there to volunteer, there to have a wonderful life experience, and they were murdered for it. It's fucking depressing. And it's sad. They both had bright futures ahead of them. Their deaths were not by accident. There are too many weird things around this case that it cannot be an accident. And I don't care what the Panama government has to say. I mean, this is just a sad and weird case all around.
I really only have one final thought that I would like to add, mostly because it's in a field or skill set of which I actually have personal experience. And that is the photographs and digital forensics of those photographs specifically. As was mentioned, photographs, whenever they're taken with a digital camera or even your cell phone, are imprinted with what is known as metadata. Metadata is the back-end text-based information of your photographs. It tells people who are looking at that information, typically, when the photo was taken, what kind of device it was taken on, things like the zoom level, the ISO level, the shutter speed, sometimes the location. Those date and time stamps on those photos are to the millisecond. They're exact. This data is 100% objective as it's created by a machine, a computer that doesn't have the ability to change things like that or to create it subjectively. It is exact and presented as perfectly cemented and static data. The thing about metadata, though, is that with knowledge, potentially by somebody who understands digital forensics or the applications that are used in digital forensics, that data can be altered. Typically, that data cannot be altered on the device itself. Some exceptions would include things like modern smartphones. However, digital cameras do not typically have the ability to modify that metadata. So, to have data of one of the photos manipulated, the timestamp altered, it tells me something was changed. Now, again, I don't work this case, and my personal knowledge of metadata and things like that comes from my working in the information system security field, but I was not a forensics analyst or specialist in any way, shape, or form. It's just something I learned and know how to do. So, that small detail right there tells me that there is more information to this case than what was put out there. What that means for the overall resolution of the case, I don't know. But it means that somebody did something for some reason. Something was changed. Something was manually modified. And the way I see it, if data like this is modified, it's typically done to cover something up. Again, that's just my personal opinion, but I think that knowing who modified the data and why it was modified is a very important step in finding answers to this case.
Some words for both of their families. I'm very sorry for your loss. I know the girls are always with you and are happy with God. I'm a spiritual person and I truly believe that. Please be careful when you are around people you do not know and in a country by yourself. Hire a guide, a legitimate guide, like from a company, to help you, because you go into these places that you don't know. You don't know the language and you don't know who the people are, and they're just going to look at you like dumb Americans or, dumb Dutch girls or whatever, or females, and they're going to think, oh, look at these helpless girls, and they're going to take advantage of you. You're not going to know when you're in danger. So it's very important that you do your research and that you go with people or a big group, or if you're a female, try to have some men around you to, kind of sway other men not to try to mess with you, or get a guide, knows some language, and that knows what the danger there looks like. Don't go into it being so naive. I watched a video about the girls supposedly having journals. It's in Dutch, so I don't know what it says, but supposedly it said that Kris was saying that she made a mistake, that she wished she was home, and that they got in way over their heads with going to a different country that they had no idea what it was going to be like. But the two girls really wanted to finish their trip and finish what they were set out to do and volunteer, but they could not wait to get home. But that's the only thing I heard. I'm not sure if it's completely true that they had these journals. So take it with a grain of salt. I do have some photos of some journals in my video that were supposedly theirs, but I'm not sure. Thank you for joining us today on this crazy, mysterious case of these two beautiful young ladies. Keep their families in your thoughts. Please go like and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget, please stay safe. If you see something, say something. We love y'all so much. Until next time, stay safe.
Chances I gave up, all the wasted time when I was stuck. The pain was all too much, still I'm holding on inside. I'm messed up, I'm toxic, I'm dragging you down. Can you still love me? Can you still love? I'm still here, I'm drowning, I'm lost now without you. I'm dead in the water, I'm not dead in your soul.
Jealousy is such a strange enemy, I know. It's all in my head, but I can see it's standing in doorways down the street, alone.